So stories of Donald Trump corruption are continuing to slowly but surely roll in. In 2016 and 2017, computer systems that screen for potential money laundering at Deutsche Bank flagged transactions conducted by legal entities owned by President Donald Trump and White House advisor Jared Kushner as suspicious. Anti-money laundering specialists at the bank took note and recommended that the transaction be reported to a financial crimes watchdog at the U.S. Treasury Department. But executives at Deutsche Bank dismissed the recommendations, and the report compiled by the specialist was never sent to the government. That's according to an exclusive report by the New York Times' David Einrich, which raises questions about the relationship between Trump and Deutsche Bank, and that has also opened up yet another set of questions about potential corruption and conflict of interest in the White House. According to the Times, 5 current and former bank employees claim that Deutsche Bank chose to ignore the concerns raised by the anti-money laundering specialist unit. Whoa. So now this story comes at the same time that this comes. Steven Mnuchin is refusing to comply with subpoena for Trump's tax returns. Trump is bending over backwards to not have his tax returns released. There are 2 potential reasons why that is. One of them is he's just not worth nearly as much as he says he's worth, and he's embarrassed by that because his whole persona and mythology is built on this idea that he's like an uber smart businessman. So that's one reason why I would maybe want to hide them. The other reason is there actually is a whole bunch of bullshit in his tax returns and a whole bunch of activity that's questionable to say the least. I think we already kind of know what he's really worth, and it's not the billions and billions that he says he's worth. I think the low figure is like 100 million and the high figure is like 500 million or something like that. I'm going in the memory bank for that. Don't quote me on that, but it's roughly around there, okay? But that I don't think that's really why he's hiding it. I think it is more because of there is shit that's in his tax returns that's like, whoa, where'd you get this from? And where'd you get that from? That's strange. What's going on here? And this is what I've been talking about for a long time, and you guys know. I think the real investigation into Trump is happening in the Southern District of New York. For the Mueller report and the Mueller investigation, I was skeptical all along. I told you he's probably not going to get him on collusion. I was correct. He didn't get him on collusion. But I've also predicted repeatedly, I think Trump will be indicted when he's no longer president by the Southern District of New York. Now, why? What would they indict him on? Well, it could be any of a number of financial crimes. I think you could get him on a dozen financial crimes, including money laundering, including, bank fraud, tax fraud. I'm sure there's just a lot of dirt there because let me tell you something. You don't get to be in construction in New York in the 1980s and the 1990s and not have dirt on you. You absolutely have to have dirt on you. Now, whether that's dealing with the mafia, that's one potential thing. Another thing is, yes, money laundering is huge, and that's what this article's about. Now, they go on to say they do, give a paragraph of caution where they say, hey, listen, just because things are flagged and it's suspicious doesn't mean that it is definitely this. It can be flagged for a number of reasons, and it's possible that they just cleared them and they were like, okay, there's nothing here to see, so no reason to go further into it. But it does look like people at the top of the bank kind of said, well, no, we're going to cut this off, nip it in the bud because we don't want it to go any further because we know what's up. Because he's had a relationship with this bank and there could be questionable funding sources for Trump. And so I've told you guys all along that the whole Russia angle was bullshit because it's proven in policy that Donald Trump is not doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. In fact, he's doing the opposite of what Putin wants on like 8 major issues. Whether it be arming Ukrainian rebels or trying to get an oil deal with Russia axed and begging Germany to have an oil deal with us instead. The list goes on and on. U.S. warships in the Black Sea. However, there is, a very high likelihood that Donald Trump has done money laundering for various actors around the world, including Russian oligarchs. Now, again, I just want to be clear. That's so different from the argument of he's Putin's puppet. Because with the Putin's puppet argument, it would have to reflect in policy. He'd have to be doing the bidding of the Russian government. And he's simply not doing that. But for money laundering for Russian oligarchs, perfectly possible, if not likely. He probably has laundered money for Russian oligarchs. And to be clear, not just for Russian oligarchs, for corrupt business people all around the world. If he couldn't get traditional loans anymore, yeah, you can go and raise money from people who got their money in very gross ways. So, that's a real scandal with Trump. I think he is a career criminal. And you are going to uncover a lot of stuff about him, which is why I think the Southern District of New York is going to nab his ass. And I really do believe that. And this is like one of the stories where I read where I was like, yep, here we go. See, this is the real stuff. There's a story about how his Panama hotel, they were allegedly laundering drug money through there. Totally possible. 100%. If not likely. So here we go. These are real stories. And I think that, Steve Mnuchin bending over backwards, to not release those tax returns, and Trump continuously lying, oh yeah, I'll release it when I'm done with my routine audit. What, has your audit been going on for fucking 3 years straight, dipshit? He's full of shit. He's trying to hide him, and he's trying to hide him because there is dirt in there. It's just the dirt is not the dirt that, the media and Democrats went all in on, the dirt of you're doing Putin's bidding. No, the dirt is he's a fucking two-bit con man and a career criminal, and he does have questionable funding sources through corruption and money laundering and a bunch of other things. So, but listen, I don't want to downplay that. That's not it's just money laundering. No, it's that's fucking money laundering. That's huge. That's huge. And again, I think that's likely. So I think he might be indicted when he's no longer president, because you can't indict a sitting president. Maybe. There's an open legal question, kind of, but at least as of right now, that's the rules we're abiding by. You can't indict a sitting president. But when he's no longer president, he could go down. And here's another story that's giving you a little hint as to something's going on here, dog. There's a reason they're bending over backwards to not release the tax returns. And there's a reason why the anti-money laundering people said, some suspicious activity in that account. And I think it is likely because there was some kind of money laundering. Call me crazy.